All right. Hello again, adventures, and welcome to another exciting daily vlog. This daily vlog number, I think, 275. And today, sorry, I need a drink. Update from yesterday's video. I actually got to sleep last night. That was nice. The pattern right now is basically every other day, every 3 days, massive panic attack. Makes me miserable for at least a day. And then I might get 1 day of actual sleep. So, still not fun, but it is what it is. Had therapy today, talked it over with my therapist. We both agreed that it sucked. And then we're trying to come up with ways to deal with this. Anyway, the thing I wanted to talk about today, for anyone that is relatively new to this channel, I didn't used to be a daily vlogger. First of all, this is the longest period of time I've ever done daily vlogs. However, since this channel's inception, every December I do a thing called Daily December. Which is basically I make a video every day for the month of December. And the purpose of Daily December is to push myself creatively, try new things, experiment with new formats, things like that. Sorry, a little bit dehydrated. So, Daily December has been essential for me kind of growing as a creator. It was the reason I started doing D&D Deep Dive. I think Play Your Faves came from there. And D&D Deep Dive is the reason Essential Essence 20 is the thing. Even discovering new dragons and designing new dragons kind of came from ideas I had during Daily December. So one of the things I do, or I have done for the past, I want to say 2-3 years now, I think this will be my 4th year doing it, is in addition to just trying new things for my Daily December, I also try new RPGs. If you don't know, I do run, I actually run 3 different RPG campaigns. 2 of them are D&D 5th edition. And I run those on alternating Wednesday nights at 9 p.m. Central Time on my Twitch channel. I upload the episodes here, which I think I forgot to upload the most recent episode because I was massively sick yesterday. But that'll get uploaded soon. And then on Saturdays, I run a Cypher System powered RPG for Zelda Universe on their Twitch channel Saturday mornings. So one of the things that I've done for the past, like I said, about 3 years is I suspend both of my Wednesday night D&D campaigns. And I run something new. The first year, I ran a new tabletop RPG every week. That was not fun. It was a learning experience, but oh boy, was it rough. Not only did I run a brand new RPG that I had never played before each week, but I also had to teach players how to play that RPG each week. It was intense. What I started doing the next year was, instead of running a new RPG every week, I would just run a little mini campaign. The first year that I did that, I ran the Power Rangers RPG, which still exists on this channel. It's Power Rangers, I think it's Night Sentinels. So if you want to see an actual live play, very short 4-episode campaign, you can check that out. The year after, so this past year, I ran Fabula Ultima, which is a really great Japanese RPG inspired TTRPG that we had a lot of fun with. And I announced over the summer that I had started planning for this year's campaign, because it does take a lot of time, especially with like my memory issues and all my disabilities. This isn't something I can just do, last minute. I have to put a decent amount of work into it. And I was tossing around a bunch of different ideas of maybe doing a Dragon Age RPG because the Veilguard's coming out at the end of the month, or I could do a Mana series inspired RPG because Visions of Mana just came out. But what I eventually decided upon was I was going to do a Metroid mini campaign, because Metroid Prime 4 is supposed to be coming out in 2025. I am a fan of Metroid. I would not say I'm like a massive fan or anything like that, but I've played almost every single Metroid game. I think the only one that I missed was Federation Force, because it was on the 3DS. And that was about it. But I have a friend who actually helped found Metroid HQ, which is one of the largest, if not the largest, and again, one of the oldest, if not the oldest, Metroid fan sites on the web. He's a massive Metroid fan. And so I thought it would be fun to do a Metroid-themed campaign. The issue being, Metroid is a very, very unique game. I mean, the Metroidvania genre of games was created entirely from the original Metroid on NES, and a lot of people don't realize this. Castlevania 2 Simon's Quest was technically the first Castlevania Metroidvania. People don't like it because it's remarkably hard, and there are certain just really unintuitive things. Like there's one of the castles that you have to beat. The only way to get there is you have to go to this random cliff and kneel down, which is just pushing down on the controller for like 5 or 6 seconds. But it never tells you that in the game. There's nothing in the game that tells you kneel down for 5 or 6 seconds. There are these kind of really obscure clues that if you talk to certain townsfolk, they will say, oh, there's something special about the West Wall or something like that. But you basically, unless someone told you how to do it, it is so incredibly unintuitive. And that happens quite a few times throughout the game. So not a whole lot of people like Simon's Quest. Anyway, so back to Metroid. So one of my biggest issues has been trying to figure out what system I wanted to use for it. Because again, the whole purpose of Daily December is to try new things and see what happens. And my idea for this Metroid campaign, the kind of genesis of it, is it's going to be the Galactic Federation, which is a thing in Metroid. If you haven't played any of the newer games, you're probably going, there's a Federation? When did this become Star Wars? No, there's a Galactic Federation. I think it's existed for a long time in the lore, but it only shows up in-game during like Other M and Prime, Metroid Prime 3. You actually interact with members of the Galactic Federation. But it's a thing. They're the people that keep hiring Samus to blow up planets. Except they don't hire her to blow up the planets. They hire her to go fix something on the planet. And the way that Samus fixes it is by exploding the planet over and over and over again. Like, she's really, really good at exploding planets. Anyway, they're going to give a call out to bounty hunters for a super secret mission in uncharted space. And that's what's going to be the kind of inciting incident for the mini campaign. And so each one of the player characters is going to be their own bounty hunter. None of them are going to be Samus because I don't want to blow up a planet. But they're all going to be able to make their own custom bounty hunter. And in the Metroid series, because it is so Samus focused, we really haven't gotten a look at other bounty hunters aside from 2 titles. The first title is Metroid Prime Hunters, which is a DS game. It was brilliant. It's one of the best games on the Nintendo DS. the single player campaign sucks. I really like it, but I can admit it's not a good campaign. But they had online multiplayer for it, and it was basically kind of a Quake style shooter. And the plot of it is there's this system where something weird is happening, and so Samus goes to figure out what's going on there. But there's also 7 other bounty hunters that also show up, and so it was the first time that we actually got to see what other bounty hunters were, and none of the bounty hunters are like, oh, it's a dude with a gun. They all have power suits, and they all have quote unquote morph ball forms. They all have special weapons that they can use. They're really, really cool. One of the bounty hunters from Metroid Prime Hunters, Silex, is apparently going to somehow be involved in Metroid Prime 4 because he showed up in the trailer. And then in Metroid Prime 3 Corruption, the Galactic Federation is actually under attack from Dark Samus. And so Samus herself, it just happens to be there and starts fighting. And then there are 3 other bounty hunters that just also happen to be there, and they all get corrupted by Phazon energy. And that's kind of the plot of the game, is dealing with the corruption. That's why it's Metroid Prime 3 Corruption. It's a super fun game. It was one of the first games I got for my Wii when I first purchased a Wii, back when they were impossible to find. I walked into a GameStop and I said, I know the answer is no, but I have to ask anyways. Do you guys have any Wiis in stock? And they go, yeah, we do. I said, you're kidding. I said, no, we have them. I'm like, shit, now I have to buy it. This was back when I had money. Yeah, so anyway, the other bounty hunters that have shown up in the Metroid series have never been, I'm a dude who has a gun, who who hunts bounties. They're all like Boba Fett style, like super badass with lots of tech and gadgets and their own thing going on for it. Like, they're all super, super cool, and they're all very, very unique. So one of the issues, I'm going to drink again because holy crap. I'm still not feeling great. I'm just feeling better than yesterday. So one of the issues I was having was I needed to find a science fiction themed RPG, or an RPG that could be flavored for science fiction. And it needed to have robust enough character creation that the players could create their own bounty hunters that felt unique enough that I could see them in like Metroid Prime Hunters just showing up and going, oh, obviously, this is what this person's going to be able to do, and it's going to be super, super cool. And that was my biggest issue, because a lot of the science fiction RPGs that I were finding, first of all, were things like Esper Genesis, which is just D&D 5th edition in space. Which is not what I wanted, because I already run D&D 5th edition. And Esper Genesis, there is enough differences that it's not just they renamed the barbarian as Space Barbarian. They actually do change a few things, but it uses the 5th edition SRD. So it is 5th edition. They just made some changes in it, so it's slightly different. Let's put it this way. It is more different than 5th edition than Pathfinder 1st edition was different from D&D 3.5. Like, it is more removed from D&D than Pathfinder is. Still not saying much. So I kept trying to find all these, because first of all, finding a decent science fiction tabletop RPG is remarkably difficult, because first of all, a lot of science fiction RPGs deal, like Star Trek Adventures, a really cool, really amazing RPG, but it's not meant for the kind of campaign I was thinking of. It's meant to replicate Star Trek. And Star Trek has bounty hunters, but they've never been a main character in the show. So that was out, and I kept trying to find other science fiction based RPGs, and I just kept coming up with issues like, well, this one just doesn't really have the character customization I was thinking of, or this one like Cyberpunk. Cyberpunk's a really great science fiction based RPG, but it's meant to emulate a dystopian future society, and it's Earth based. So while I could jury rig something like Cyberpunk into something that would work, it would be awkward. And so for a while, I had settled on 3 different RPGs that I was thinking about. There's the Modern Age system, which is a cool system, but again, it's designed for modern RPGs, not futuristic science fiction RPGs in space. They have rules in there for doing futuristic stuff, but it's not what the system is designed for. It's designed for telling modern stories. So that one, I'm like, I could do it, but I'm not sure. Traveler was another one, which is really, really interesting and unique. But as far as creating your own bounty hunter, it's going to be a little bit different because in Traveler, it's a lot more about telling a more kind of Star Trek or Lensman, I guess, even style of futuristic space story, not big explosions and cool power armors and stuff like that. So I'm like, not really. I thought about the Warhammer 40k stuff because that's science fiction, but oh hell no, Warhammer 40k goes dark real quick. And then the other one I was looking at was Stars Without Number, which again was interesting, but the character customization was a little bit more difficult. Again, creating a bunch of characters with like their own unique power armors and stuff like that was going to be difficult in that. And then I saw the light 17 minutes into the video. There is an indie RPG published by a group called Massive Press. Massif Press. The RPG is called Lancer. It came on my radar years ago because it is kind of an anime-inspired mech tabletop RPG, and it's awesome. It's super, super cool. In it, you create a pilot character, and then you also create a create a mech for them to pilot. And as you level up, your character, gets new stuff, and you get the equivalent of feats in that. But you also get these things called license levels, and license levels are used to basically unlock new gear and, more importantly, new frames, which is their word for like the core mech. It is such an interesting, unique system, and I've wanted to run something in Lancer for years at this point because it's so cool and it's so interesting. And again, it's an indie tabletop RPG that doesn't get anywhere near the recognition that it deserves to get. So what I decided was I'm going to use Lancer for it, and basically the pilot stats that they create are going to be their humanoid selves, basically the Zero Suit Samus version of their characters. And then the mechs, instead of being giant 50-foot tall mechs, are just going to be their power armors. And as far as my theory crafting goes, I think it's going to work. The one thing that doesn't work super, super well in Lancer, you actually can exit your Lancer, is what they call them. You can actually exit your Lancer and like do things on the ground. And the massive difference between a human and a giant mech means that stuff like that has some real serious consequences. And by making the giant mechs into just suits of armor, theoretically there might be some issues with that. But it's a 4-session campaign, so I don't think it's going to be that big a deal. The other thing that I really like about Lancer is the core book itself, the PDF, will run you $25. And you can get it directly from their Itch.io site, or they have their own website with its own shop that you can get it there too. You can also get a physical version of it, I think for like $60, which for the amount of content in the core book, totally fine with $60. It's there's a lot in there. However, on their Itch.io site, which they still, all the books that they publish, you can buy them, and the PDFs and everything, you can buy them in their shop, but you can also buy them on Itch.io. And on their Itch.io page, they have a free version of the Lancer core book. The free version is basically everything up until the GM bits of the book. So it has the complete rule set. It has all the player character options. As far as I can tell, some people have claimed that it's missing some of the equipment. I haven't, because I own both of them. I haven't seen any missing equipment or anything like that, but it's possible there is. But it's basically everything that a player needs to be able to play Lancer, you can get for free. There's going to be a link in the description down below. Feel free to download the free rules and then go back and buy the core book, because it's that cool. But that's another thing that I really, really like is any of my players that want to play this game, they don't have to wait for me to share a book with them or have to, rely on me to know the rules well enough to be able to build their character for them or anything like that. I can just point them to, hey, here are the free rules. You can learn the entire system if you want before the game even starts. Now, every one of my players, I tell them this. You do not have to learn anything about the system before playing. I am a trainer. That's where the trainer in Trainer Jody comes from. And I always teach the game as I run it. That's one of the reasons why I like doing a system that I've never run before for Daily Decembers, because I get to learn a new system, and then I get to teach other people this new system as well. So I've already told all of my Wednesday night players, hey, by the way, this is the campaign that I'm doing. This is the system that we're going to be using. Because I'd actually asked them, I said, hey, if you guys, because I was having a real hard time figuring this out, if you guys know any systems that might work for this, just send me a link or something so I can look into them. One of my players got back to me and recommended Teens in Space, which I was blown away that I didn't own any of the Kids on Bikes series of tabletop games. It's a series I think it's made by Renegade. I might be wrong. But anyway, it's a series that exists for a long time. And Kids on Bikes is basically if you wanted to run your own, like, Stranger Things campaign, you could use Kids on Bikes to run it. Because it's meant to kind of emulate that style of things. Like Stand By Me, Stranger Things, where a bunch of kids, even like E.T., kind of fits into that as well. It's where a bunch of kids get involved in something that kids shouldn't have to deal with, but they go on this amazing adventure to deal with these larger than life situations. That's what Kids on Bikes is. They made a different version of it called Kids on Brooms, so anyone that wanted to run their own Harry Potter themed adventure without having to actually use anything involving Harry Potter for reasons, they could. And Kids on Brooms, tons and tons and tons of people love it. The guys over at Dimension 20, I believe Misfits in Magic, uses the Kids on Brooms system. I think, I'm not 100% certain. Don't yell at me if I'm wrong about that. I might be wrong. Anyway, Kids on Brooms is really, really cool. And then Teens in Space is another thing that's basically powered by the Kids on Bikes system. And so I looked into that, and it's a really cool system, but it is very, very... trying to think of the right word. It's very vague, let's put it that way. Most of the stuff in there, kind of similar, if you've ever played a Powered by the Apocalypse game, most of your moves and things like that are described in extremely vague terms, and the only thing they get specific on is the mechanical impacts of what it does. But everything else about it is extremely vague because it is intended that you flavor it yourself, and they want to encourage creativity by not limiting you to, well, I want to use this particular weapon, but they don't have that weapon listed. Or one of the biggest issues I run into with D&D 5th edition, I like whip-wielding characters. Probably because I'm a huge Castlevania fan. Not what you were thinking. Stop it. But I really love whips as a weapon. I think they're really fun and cool. Also, I'm a huge Indiana Jones fan, so between Castlevania and Indiana Jones, I like whips. And whips in D&D 5th edition just suck. They don't like them. They don't really, like, even things like Blade Singers. Part of the lore of Blade Singers specifically mentioned there is a style of blade singing that uses a whip, which is great, but the Blade Singer specific spells, cantrips, things like Green Flame Blade, Thunder Blade, they require you to make an attack with a weapon. Well, whip is a reach weapon, and the spells themselves cannot work on a creature that's further than 5 feet away. So the one benefit of the super low damage die 1d4 whip is its reach property, and you can't use that as a blade singer. There's very few things that interact with whips very well, and you really can't. They're really just throwing a dagger without having to pick it up, because they do the exact same damage as a dagger, except daggers do piercing and they do slashing, but they're not great. So that's a nice thing about those kind of vague, nebulous style RPGs, is you can just flavor things as, oh, I use this. But the specific types of adventure that Kids in Space or Teens in Space is designed to do is basically a bunch of rebellious teens that get their own ship and then go off causing chaos and trouble throughout the galaxy. And again, that's not the adventure that I was trying to run. So Lancer in and of itself has enough in it that feels like it fits right. Like, Lancers in general in the game are mercenaries. So the idea of this being a team of bounty hunters makes sense. The frames themselves are very, very customizable because you can put different core bonuses and you can attach different kind of subsystems to them so that everyone can have their own kind of unique thing. And then there's something like, I actually don't know how many, I have no idea how many different frames there are. But the way that you unlock a frame is each frame has 3 levels of licenses you have to unlock for it. The first level will give you a new weapon and generally a new system that you can install on any frame. The second level will unlock the actual frame itself and generally one other thing, whether it's a new subsystem or a new weapon, but it'll be designed to work well with that frame. But what that means is, through using the license system, you can take weapons from any one of these, like, there's dozens of them. There's at least a few dozen. Any one of these, and kind of mix and match them with any frame you have unlocked to create these really unique characters. And the weapons in and of themselves are not just, oh, this one does piercing damage, while this one does slashing damage. They're totally different. No, each weapon has unique aspects about how it can attack, what happens when it attacks. So they're much more unique than just, this is my great hammer and it smashes things, unlike my longsword, which slashes things. So yeah, everything about it, this system, I really, really love. Again, I've wanted to run games in it for so long, and I just haven't had a chance to do that. So yeah, we'll see how it goes. It might be an epic failure. We don't know yet. This is just how things work for me. But I'm excited about it. Like I said, I've got a link to the free version off of Massive Press's Itch.io. So go ahead and check it out if that's what you're interested in, or if you want to kind of read up before the campaign starts. Yeah, I think, like, I'm a huge fan of any tabletop RPG that has a free version for players. Like, I have learned if I'm going to be a game master, I'm gonna have to pony up money. That's how it's worked for 50 years. Game masters always are the ones that are spending the most money in the hobby. Players generally aren't. But when I find a system that I want to run, it is so much easier to convince people to use that system when I can go, by the way, if you want to learn about the system, here is a free version of the rules that has everything you need to be able to play. And I think that is an essential thing in the current tabletop RPG market for a system to really have staying power. Like D&D has had something like that in the SRD for a while. It was one of the reasons why 4th edition wasn't quite as popular as they wanted, though, to be perfectly honest, the reason 4th edition wasn't quite as popular as they wanted is for $10 you got every book that was ever published. And they never thought that, well, wait a minute, we're going to lose money on this. So that was the real reason. By the way, 4th edition still outsold every single book that 3rd edition ever sold in like its first year or so. So it wasn't that it was unpopular, it didn't meet sales expectations. There's a very, very big difference there. But then there's other systems where, you know, in order to be able to play it, somebody has to pay something to be able to buy it. So it's nice to see an indie RPG like this not just have like a version for players, but it's basically the complete rule set, the complete core book that players are going to be interested in, because everything that's not in there is the GM section, which teaches you like how to build NPCs and monsters and stuff like that, how to create combat encounters, how to run the game itself, and then the very last chapter is the setting description with all the lore and everything for their default setting. So that's probably the only part of the paid for core book that players might actually want, because knowing the setting is very useful. Since I'm making my own setting, that stuff doesn't matter. But yeah, it's not like with the basic version of D&D 5th edition, they give you, especially the new one, the old one, they gave you every single core class in one subclass. The new basic version is 4 classes and 1 subclass each. Now, I believe that's going to change once the Monster Manual comes out, because they're going to be updating the SRD to include all of the new 5.5 stuff. And in order for that to happen, they'll have to have the other classes, because changes happen to the classes. So I'm assuming once we get the Monster Manual and the updated SRD comes out next February, they'll have all of them. But even then, you still have a very kind of truncated version of the game and a very limited version of the game. So to me, it's really, really impressive that Massive puts up basically the entirety of the game for free. Like, I think that's really, really cool. And then there's also, they have a online character builder, which is really, really cool. And I've played around with it a little bit. It's not the most, or at least it wasn't when I first tried using it. It's not the most intuitive thing I've ever done, but it's not bad. And if you understand the system, it works perfectly. But for people that are unfamiliar with the system, it's not quite like with the D&D Beyond character builder. You can know nothing about D&D and still build a working character with very little help whatsoever. Like, it's intuitive enough that anyone can do it. The character builder that they have for Lancer, you really do need to know the system in order to be able to build your characters. It doesn't really do any hand-holding. But that being said, it's still a really cool system. And Roll20 has character sheets that are pretty nice as well. So anyway, I thought you guys might be interested in knowing that in December I will be running a Metroid-themed campaign using the Lancer RPG as our setting, which this will be a first. The other two ones I've used the effectively default setting for them. Like Power Rangers is Power Rangers. Didn't need to do that much. And then for Fabula Ultima, you actually have to. Well, you don't have to, but you're very much encouraged to create your own setting as part of Session Zero. But I'm still using the kind of default stuff built into it. This will be the first time that I'm taking an established RPG that already has its own campaign setting and modifying it to create a brand new system. So, yeah, like I said, I'm interested. It looks like it's going to be fun. It'll definitely be weird. So, hope you guys are excited about it. Anyway, it's all from me. We'll see you guys next time. All right? Bye-bye.